everyone, welcome back to Simming History, where we look at the history of architecture through the lens of The Sims. Before we get started today, if you like the video, please take a moment to hit like and subscribe. Today we complete a mini-series on World Fair architecture, and we're going to Barcelona for the 1929 Barcelona International Exposition. Let's get into it. This time we aren't starting off with the last fair. Instead, we're going to talk about the eras of World's Fairs. Generally, World's Fairs are divided into three eras: industrialization, cultural exchange, and nation branding. The fairs we've discussed so far fell into the industrialization era, an era defined by technological advancements and the competition between America, Britain, and France. The highlights of these fairs included engineering marvels, huge machines, and engines, and of course, the introduction of electricity. But something happened in the 20th century. The world went to war, and in 1915, while the First World War raged in Europe, San Francisco held a World's Fair centered on the engineering marvel that was the Panama Canal. And then after that, nothing. Not for 14 years, until finally in 1929, Spain held the Barcelona International Exposition. The fair opened on May 19, 1929 and remained open until January 15, 1930. The site chosen for this fair is unique. Up to this point, the grounds had all been flat. Paris, for example, had held their fair on a military training ground. But Barcelona chose to have its fair on Montjuic, a hill in Barcelona on which sat a 17th century fortress. Just like with all the previous World's Fairs, there were so-called palaces that held exhibits relating to art and industry, as well as the pavilions by countries and companies exhibiting their local goods and culture. But the most important structure that came from this World's Fair was one designed by the German architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, who was an architect of the International style and a contemporary, therefore, of Le Corbusier. For context, Villa Savoie was being built at the same time. Mies was actually put in charge of a total of 27 buildings and exhibits, but it was his German pavilion that had the greatest impact. Unlike other pavilions, this one did not have any exhibits inside. The pavilion was the exhibit. It was built up on a platform, and it had a main courtyard that had a reflection pool and a partial perimeter wall faced in travertine. The floor throughout the pavilion was also travertine. The pavilion had a flat roof that was supported by a series of chrome cruciform columns, so cross or plus shaped. Because the roof was supported by these columns, the walls and glass could be anywhere, and they did not need to align to any grid, and in fact they didn't. Some of the walls were really just gray tinted glass and chrome frames and no walls at all, and all the rest were walls faced in black, red, or green book-matched stone. Opposite the doors to the pavilion is a glass wall leading out to another small reflecting pool, this one walled in with the green stone, and in the reflecting pool was a statue of a nude woman dancing. The only furnishings in the pavilion were red velvet curtains, designed by interior designer Lily Reich, and what became known as the Barcelona chairs and the Barcelona stools. These iconic chairs were chrome framed with white leather upholstery, and they were designed by Mies. And if you feel so inclined, you can still buy these. A reproduction is being made by a German company, but with a really hefty price tag. Mies's intention for this pavilion was not only to advocate international design principles, but to showcase quality materials and craftsmanship. And it did as it planned. It influenced architecture in Europe and made the international style more popular. Unfortunately, after the exposition, the pavilion was dismantled and its materials sold to recoup some of the costs. But in case you didn't notice, there are color pictures of this pavilion, and that is because in 1986 it was rebuilt, using the original design documentation and the historic photographs, and materials that match the original. So yes, you can still visit the German pavilion, known today as the Barcelona Pavilion. So what happened after the Barcelona World's Fair? Because we're stopping here. Well, the era of the cultural exchange, which focused on global understanding, continued into the 1980s, giving way to the current era known as nation branding, where participating countries focused on improving their image through their pavilions. The big three, France, Britain, and the United States, no longer host, and it's been given way to smaller or up-and-coming countries, especially Asian and Middle Eastern. Can you visit a World's Fair? Well, yes, you can. In fact, Expo 2020 was delayed for obvious reasons and is being held this year in fall of 2021 in the United Arab Emirates. The UAE, not your cup of tea? Fine. You can catch it in Buenos Aires, Argentina in 2023 or Osaka, Japan in 2025. So what about the long-term legacy of the World's Fairs? There are the obvious technological advancements, the adoption of electricity, etc. But we're here for the buildings. And you can still visit several, and I don't just mean the Eiffel Tower. In Chicago, you can visit the Museum of Science and Industry, which was the former Palace of Fine Arts. And you can visit the Art Institute of Chicago, which was an auxiliary conference building, both for the Columbian Exposition. There's also the San Francisco Japanese Tea Garden, Nashville's Parthenon, the Civic Aquarium of Milan, Seattle's Space Needle, New York's Unisphere and New York State Pavilion, which made an appearance in the movie Men in Black, Habitat 67 in Montreal, and so many more. But one of the biggest cultural impacts? Showing us it's a small world after all. Literally, that ride was originally made by Disney for the 1964 New York World's Fair, along with several other rides. And after the fair, the rides packed up and moved to California, and you can ride them still at Disneyland. And the idea of a permanent World's Fair, that became the basis for Disney World's Epcot. So maybe you don't need to travel to the UAE after all. You can just go to Disney World. So what are my final thoughts on the Barcelona Pavilion? Well, we've already talked a little bit about international style with the Villa Savoie video, and I made it clear I was not a fan of Le Corbusier and his idea that homes were machines for living in. I find his homes cold. I don't find this pavilion cold, though. Mise's approach of celebrating and showcasing materials and craftsmanship, I think, brings a warmth to the international style that Corb's buildings simply lack. So, international will never be my favorite, but I like Mise's designs. So thanks for joining me today as we took a look at the German Pavilion in Barcelona. Next time, well, we're just going to have to wait and see, because honestly, I'm not sure yet. Any ideas? Maybe I'll just do something fun. It's been that kind of busy summer so far. Until then, you can find me on Instagram at Simming History, and on the Sims 4 gallery, there'll be playable versions of many of the builds on this channel, including this one. Thank you to all the new subs. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe. When we hit 1,000, I will do a live build. So subscribe and share so you can watch me suffer in real time. I'll see you all next time. Until then, bye!